Welcome to the only show bringing cops and the community together for some real talk and some real listening. This is uncut. This is uncensored. This is Black and Blue Live. How you doing, everybody? Welcome to Black and Blue Live. My name is Dale. I'm the host. Thank you, everybody, for joining me here today. Out there right now, we got a lot of stuff going on as far as law enforcement and the community. And people got questions about, why do police officers do what they do, when they do it. So we got some guests here that can hopefully answer some of those questions on officers' defensive tactics and maybe some stuff that you guys can use yourself in the future. So let's bring them on one by one. First guest here is a former police officer with the Illinois State University. He is now an assistant principal at Judson University. Everybody, please help me welcome in Dr. Jeremy Butler. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Just to make sure we clear the areas, assistant professor at Judson.
Assistant professor, yes.
Yeah.
All right. We got that clarification. And the next guest here, she is a detective in Dallas, Texas. Everything's bigger in Texas. So everybody help me welcome in Raquel Oliver. How you doing, Raquel?
I am doing great. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, glad to have you. All right. And everything good right now in Texas?
In Dallas, everything seems to be calm right now.
So yeah, how about the Cowboys?
We won today.
Oh, finally. All right.
Hey,
and my next guest here, he is a veteran of the Bellevue Police Department in Washington. Looks like he's having there we go. And in the state of Washington, everybody please help me welcome in Craig Hanaomi. Hey, Craig, how you doing, sir? Oh, this is live, everybody. This is live. He will be back shortly. You saw his face there, so he will be. Looks like he was in with us good. But we want to talk about some defensive tactics. We want to talk about safety, personal safety. We want to talk about use of force. I think Craig is coming on here real quick. Give me a second here. I'll add him to the stream. Are you there, Craig? Craig, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. So we brought you on. Looks like you're frozen there, but we will get him on. Trust me, ladies and gentlemen. This is live, the magic of live streaming here. But in the meantime, we got Dr. Jeremy Butler, used to be a police officer. He's still into fitness and exercise as well. So we'll let him talk about himself and we'll go from there. Go ahead, tell everybody about yourself, Jeremy.
All right. Well, again, I'm assistant professor of health promotion and performance in the Department of Exercise and Sports Science at Judson University. Prior to making my transition into academia, I was a police officer with Illinois State University Police Department for about 7 years. And in terms of my defensive tactics experience, I've been doing martial arts pretty much most of my life for about 20 years now. And 15 of those years I've been teaching. And I own Pagoda Rebirth Martial Arts here in Illinois. And as far as during my time as a police officer, about 3 or 4 of those years, my latter years there, I worked as a verbal de-escalation instructor as well as a police defensive tactics instructor for our regional mobile training unit.
Excellent. We'll definitely get into that as well. And Raquel, tell everybody about you and your experience, what you do, and what your experience is in defensive tactics.
All righty. I am Raquel Oliver. I have been with Dallas for 15 years, and I spent about 6 years at the Dallas Police Academy. At our academy, it's only Dallas officers. So when we hire, you go straight to the academy. There's usually about 6 classes at our academy at one time. At about 35 to 50 people. So I'm a defensive tactics and physical training instructor at the academy. I did that for about 5 or 6 years. And my background was only in Krav Maga. I didn't have a large background in martial arts, which I think is a positive thing. So that lets women know, especially, that you don't have to have a background in martial arts to be able to protect yourself and handle yourself on the streets. And I'm glad that we're going to talk about that today. That's huge. I've been a personal trainer and a health coach for about 25, 26 years. So fitness has been a part of my life well before I came to the Dallas Police Department. But being a part of the department, I do the Commitment to Fitness program for the officers because I believe, as well as the other guys here, how important it is for us to stay active and healthy, to protect ourselves and to protect the community. So that, and I've owned a couple of gyms, so fitness is just my lifestyle, and I'm glad to be able to bring that over to the police department.
All right. And before we get to you, Craig, looks like you made it back, so thank you for that. But we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Periscope. Your comments and questions are welcome, so please send those in. Michael Mata on Facebook says, Rock is awesome, Dallas PD's finest. All right. Thank you for that. Craig, tell everybody about yourself, what you do there in the great state of Washington, and your background in defensive tactics.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Dale. My name is Craig.
You got it.
And this is my 16th year in law enforcement. I've worked 13 years in the city of Bellevue. Before that, I worked 3 years for the Honolulu Police Department. And my current position right now is a community station officer. I also help teach defensive tactics for our department. And I've been training jiu-jitsu for almost 12 years now, and I'm a purple belt under Henner and Hidon Gracie.
All right. Excellent. Excellent. So we got a lot of experience here. So we'll definitely tap into that as we get into our discussion here. Roger Murtaugh here on Facebook says hello from the East Coast. So Roger is also one of our followers here on Facebook and Instagram. So we appreciate you for chiming in on that. So we got into your experience, everyone's experience in training and in martial arts and self-defense and all that. But we want to also talk about realistic training. You know, we all go through that in law enforcement. Jeremy, you said you were involved with the defensive training as well at your former department. And we want to talk about, it's been my experience when I go through defensive tactics training, they always tell us to go slow because we don't want anyone to get hurt, you know, because we're all working, we go out on the street and do our jobs. But how does that help when you actually go out there and you have to confront somebody and use the defensive tactics? What do you think about that, Jeremy?
Well, I think you have to have that balance. I do understand the concern for risk of injury, especially as a result of, especially as it relates to some of the barriers that we have in terms of training as a whole in law enforcement. You know, whether it be budgetary issues or just, you know, lack of resources. So yes, there's that factor where we have to be careful about the level of force that we use in training. But at the same time, as you said, the concern is going to be, is the quality there? Is it even worth the officer's time if they're not going to get training that's going to be consistent with the type of situations they deal with in real life? And I actually did some focus group research last year with veteran officers. And that's one of the things that came up was concerns about the quality of the training and whether or not it's even worth the time if they're not going to be able to actually really carry out the skills and the training in a way that's going to be beneficial to them. So there has to be a healthy balance there. But I do think that as a whole, it seems like there's a strong erring on the side of caution to a point where we have that issue of we're not really getting what we really need out of the training as a whole.
Right. Craig, what do you think about that? The training not being realistic in the training environment. So then when you need it out in the field, are you really prepared?
Well, it's hard when that's a good question. You know, I think the hardest part is you have to start off with some kind of foundation because most of us, including myself, didn't do any training before law enforcement. So if you're starting from that as a baseline, I think there has to be a period where you have to, teach up to a certain point and then intermittently put in the high intensity stuff. So it has to be a balance for sure.
Yeah. And then Raquel, you were at the academy for a while, so you saw people that were coming in with very little or no experience, including yourself when you first started. So how do you work up to a proficient level there? I'm sure you just don't do it at the academy. You got to do some training after that. But how do they progress in the academy?
With us, we have a system. They spend 300 hours with me, each person, NDT and PT. So we do have a system that's built from just stance, just from how you stand in a confrontation all the way to complete hands-on. So our program is structured. And I do think there is a balance. I agree with other guys. I do think it's important that we understand that we have to go hard. We do it with clocks a lot. So we do go hard a lot, and it's fantastic. But I think it's also, safety is important, because I do want to have healthy officers when they graduate to be able to go on the streets. So we do go pretty hard, and we do have injuries. I've been injured. I had a hip replacement, right? So we do go pretty hard in our academy, but we start very, very slow. And I think that's important for people to know. You don't have to have martial arts background. Sometimes it's nice when a recruit comes in with no background, because sometimes they'll want to resort to wrestling because they were a wrestler, or any other martial arts because of that. But we have a program that we have put together that's a mixture of many things. Jiu-jitsu, Krav Maga, it's a mixture of things that we have put together, and we use all of it. And I think it's kind of nice when they come in and don't have a big background in martial arts, so we can start from the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that. How often do you train in your defensive tactics?
We train, you saying after they get out of the academy?
Yeah. Well, you personally, how often do you stay on top of your training? And I'll ask you the same thing, Jeremy.
Yeah, I'm probably 3 to 4 days a week, because I enjoy the rolling around. I enjoy the physical part of it. So I might be a little bit different, especially for a female, because I'm the only female instructor at our academy. I might be a little bit different, but I enjoy the physicalness. You need to know what it feels like to be held down. You need to know what it feels like to get hit. And those things are important. And while we can't just go hard in that way, where we're punching each other at the academy, it's important for you to know what it feels like to be held down and to feel a little bit scary, and what you need to do to be able to get out of it. So I'm one of those almost everyday people, Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Craig, we good on the signal here? It's like you popping in and out here. So we want to make sure that we get you content. So you got a lot of good stuff to say. Jeremy, I was going to ask you that question. How often do you train to stay on top of it? I know you're in jiu-jitsu and some different forms of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, martial arts has been kind of I would almost say an obsession, but a true passion for me since I was a kid. As a result of COVID lately, it's actually decreased a little bit. I'd say down about 2 to 3 days a week, whereas prior to March, I was training probably 6 days a week, whether it be teaching or training jiu-jitsu on the mats, one or the other. Because I teach a variety of different arts, from jiu-jitsu, kali, karate, the go-to martial arts system. So a variety of different styles. So I'd say at this point, I'm at about 3 days a week. And I actually just started teaching a college course, a 4-credit self-defense class at Judson University. So I get that in plus some time on my own.
Nice. And Craig, how often are you out there on the mat training?
At least maybe 3 or 4 times a week. Not as much as I want to right now, but that is nothing. I personally don't think that there's anything comparable to the close quarter grapple, because unlike I think other people touched on it too, but the biggest difference is you can scale the intensity to be minimal to 100%, and without strikes you can do 100% multiple times a week without injury.
Yeah. So I got a video or two of you out there on the mat that I grabbed from your Instagram, so everyone can see what kind of stuff that Craig does. Let's check it out here real quick. that off there. Yeah, that's some realistic stuff right there. I mean, look like you're going hard with that guy there. What kind of training is that? What's that about?
Well, I couldn't see the feed, fortunately, so I don't know which video you guys are talking about.
Yeah, that was you. You were in uniform, and some guy was wrestling with you. Looked like you were trying to. He was trying to take your gun and stuff like that, and little ground fighting there. So, do you do that often in uniform? Do you do that kind of stuff in uniform? Actually, the kind of realistic training there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, train like how you fight, and if I gonna have, I think one of the funniest things is whenever I do a jiu-jitsu video, without fail, if it's in uniform, doesn't matter what I'm doing on the mat, any technique, if a jiu-jitsu person is watching it, the first thing they will say is shoes on the mat, like every single time.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what, but and it's funny because like we don't, jiu-jitsu is barefoot like most martial arts, and I mean we're not, that's fine. I mean there's a hygienic reason, but when you put boots on, it makes the grapple different. It gets caught on close, and you have less flexibility. And then you throw that a belt on top of that with the interior vest. It changes it a lot. And the last thing I want to do is feel how that feels like in a real fight for the first time. So
right,
that's why I do it.
Absolutely.
And it looks kind of cool.
All right. Yeah, it looks like he's having some problems here, so maybe we got the comments from him, and then maybe he can just go 10-8 there. So I wanted to talk about people using their defensive tactics. If they're not proficient, we've seen a lot of videos nowadays with officers, wrestling with people and then losing control of those persons, and then eventually having to go shooting the person with their firearms. Do we think that officers rely too heavily on firearms because they're not proficient with defensive tactics? Have you had any opinions on that, seeing these videos that have been out here recently? Jeremy?
Yes. So this is a perspective that I've talked about with several officers in the past. So I'm a firm believer that, we should base our force options on the totality of the circumstances. So what are the circumstances that the officer is faced with at that moment? And so sometimes it's being hands-on, sometimes it's a matter of needing intermediate weapons. But yeah, I do think there's often an issue of, when officers aren't proficient in the hands-on tactics, they move into this perspective that, there's this over-reliance on the tools on the belt. And I think it could be sort of dangerous to put that much faith in something that, has been shown to malfunction, can even potentially get taken away from you if you don't train properly for it. So I definitely think it's something that has come up in society as a whole, and discussions that need to be had for sure with the law enforcement community in terms of that balance.
Yeah. What's your feeling on that, Raquel?
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Butler. I think that if we don't train often, we will resort to our tools, and there's no way around that. I know at the Academy we talk a lot about not putting too much on defensive tactics, but hands-on, we should do more of that. We do need to know how to use our tools, and we do need to be proficient using our tools. But I think it's very important that we're on the mat or training in some way physically daily, so we don't automatically go to our tools, but also to understand our tools. Understanding when to use them is a big part as well. And totality of circumstances we teach from day one, and also time distance cover. That's one of the things we teach from day one. But I think that it's a matter of practice. We're always going to revert to what we've done the most.
Yep.
And if you haven't done any of them the most, right? If you're not training the most, you're not using your tools the most, it's just going to be a mess when we get on the streets and we get to see that. And I think it's a huge lack of training.
And they say that about, physical fitness. A lot of these parolees are out, all they were doing when they were inside is working out. A lot of them, that's all they're doing is training defensive tactics too. So learning, so if you're not learning it, they are. So you got to stay on top of that stuff.
Absolutely.
Again, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Periscope. Your comments and questions are welcome. Bob Hussey says Raquel is one of the best Dallas PD instructors. Okay, you got a little fan club here.
I guess.
And Raj Murtaugh again says, I couldn't agree more about the importance of feeling as much pressure as possible in training. So when you get on the street, your body will feel like you have been there before.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Craig says. Yeah, train like you, practice like you actually going to get in that fight.
Yeah.
You got to do it for real. You got to do it for real.
Absolutely.
So what other factors can play a role in officers' use of force? You know, we're going to delve into use of force here. You know, we got officer safety tactics. We've also got command presence. Why don't you explain what that is for the lay person out there viewing it that's not in law enforcement? What is command presence? What is officer safety tactics? Go ahead, Raquel. Yeah, go ahead, Raquel.
I think that, well, we think of command presence differently. I mean, there's two things that I would look at as command presence, but I think how we show up on a scene is important, right? And that is a way of looking at command presence. And why that's important is, like you said, people are in prison or coming out and they're training just to fight us, right? That's a part of their training. We watch the videos, we see that they're training on how to get out of some of the situations that they're in with us. And if you walk up on the scene, and I am a big believer of this, if you walk up on the scene and you're unsure, you're out of shape, your uniform is a mess, that says a lot about how, if you're ready to, that's the first, stepping out of that car is the first thing they see. And I think that's huge, to look like you're there to handle the scene, period. And I know with this climate, we hesitate to what we're going to look like and what we're going to do and what we're going to say when we're out there. But to me, that's just paramount as far as safety goes, is I need to get out of the car and look like I mean business and I can handle this scene and we can get things taken care of. Because people take advantage of that. They can tell who's weaker. They can tell when you're not sure because you haven't been training, right? And so I think that's huge.
Yeah. Jeremy, what do you think about that?
Yeah. I think she hit on a really good point, and this is sort of has been the focal point of my research, because my doctoral dissertation was actually on police defensive tactics training, specifically academy recruits and how their training impacted their confidence. And so what I thought about with what Raquel was bringing up is that confidence factor as it relates to that command presence. So I think, well, I know that confidence is one of the strongest predictors of performance in a use of force situation or in any situation. So I think having an officer who has a strong level of what we call self-efficacy in the academic industry, but the idea of confidence in their abilities, that's going to make a huge difference in how they handle the situation, how they are perceived. And ironically, one of the strongest methods of increasing our confidence is through performance accomplishments, mastery experiences. So it goes right back to that training. The more successful habits we have with being on the mat and using our defensive tactics and practicing these skills, the more confident we are going to be in our ability to handle the situation. And the safer, not only will we be, the safer the assailant will be as well. You know, if we have complete control over the situation and we have the skill set to subdue this person, you know, everybody is safer in the long run.
Right. Absolutely. So you guys think a number of these incidents that we've been seeing on the YouTubes and on the news maybe could have been avoided if officers were more confident in their defensive tactics? I know some of these videos started out with a hands-on incident that kind of escalated into something else because they couldn't get control of the suspect in the beginning. Do you think some of these incidents, some of these shootings could have been avoided?
Well, who you want to go first?
Yeah, you mute. Yeah, there you go. You're muted there, Rocky.
Oh,
there you go.
All right.
Go ahead, Raquel.
Okay, Raquel.
Okay.
I thought you were talking, but you were muted. So
I saw that I was muted, so I didn't, because there's a lot of background noise. I do believe that, And it's hard because we're not in another officer's head.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things we tend to do because of the climate, and I don't even know that this has changed over the last 10 years, is we'll go in soft and then we have to escalate because we just didn't take care of business right at the beginning. I think that's huge. And we talk about that a lot at the academy. If you need to grab the person, we need to grab it, take care of business, but we'll go in soft and then the fight escalates and then we escalate. And then before you know it, it's out of hand because we didn't just take care of it in the beginning. We're so hesitant of what it looks like, right? And I can understand that.
Yeah.
Because the videos we know that we get videos and we only see a portion of them, right? And then later the whole hour comes out and you realize it's a completely different scene. So I get it. I get why officers sometimes don't go when they know it's time to go hands-on, you go all the way so you can take care of it. And like Dr. Butler was saying, it's safety for us because now we're not out grappling with somebody and that's not our element really. And it's safety for them because we took care of business quickly and then we go to jail or whatever it is we have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell people that, now no one wants to be that next viral video, but police work isn't pretty. I mean, when it's on camera, it's not pretty. I mean, a lot of times it's dirty and we got to get in there and handle business like you said. But if you put that on the news or on the YouTube or on Facebook, it doesn't look pretty. But I mean, it is what it is. It's law enforcement, and if, like you said, if we take care of business quickly and mitigate some of those instances as best we can. So yeah, absolutely. So does your agency now, Raquel, authorize the lateral vascular neck restraint, the LVNR?
No.
Or it does not. I know a lot of agencies have gone away from that.
Yeah, we've gone away from it. I know that officers that were taught it, early on, our 30-year officers, the ones that have been around for a while, that's going to be a natural technique for them because they practice it so much. But that's no longer at our academy.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's been gone for a while, actually, yeah.
That long, huh? Yeah.
It's been gone for a while. I mean, it's been gone in the 15 years I've been here at least. We did not teach. I wasn't taught that when I came through the academy.
Yeah. We were still teaching it back in maybe the last 5-7 years over here in my county. But at least in my agency, it was rarely used.
Yeah.
So we never had any instances where we had to worry about it. Jeremy, your prior agency over at Illinois State, did they teach that over there, or was it part of the tool belt?
It was a variation of it. So primarily what was taught through our regional training unit. So MTU 8 was the PPCT system, pressure point control tactic system. And the neck restraint that is used in that system is called a shoulder pin restraint. So it's not like the lateral vascular neck restraint in the traditional stance, like a rear naked choke. This one is actually, if you're familiar with jiu-jitsu in any way, this is like the arm triangle. So one arm is actually in with the restraint versus just isolating the neck. So we did teach that, but literally right when I left, this I believe is when we scratched it from the policy. So at this point, no, we don't have any neck restraints that are allowed. Obviously, as with state law, and I got to realize too that you guys are in different states, but with Illinois, you can only use it in a deadly force situation. So obviously it's a resource in a deadly force situation, but it's no longer available for officers within policy for just standard aggressive assailants.
Right. And I always let people know that, when it's, if you can articulate using that or anything, using a pen to the eye, if you can articulate why you did it, because you had to do it in a life or death situation, then anything's authorized, so long as you can articulate how you used it, why you used it. But just as a general rule, no, it's recently in California been, we've had to sign some attestations that we're no longer going to be using that. But my agency, we haven't been doing that for a while. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. And then, of course, that's commonly known as a chokehold, which is, obviously not a chokehold. It's It's wholly something different. So I just wanted to let that out there for people that didn't know that. Raj Murtaugh, I believe he's in Massachusetts, says we don't teach the LVR in Massachusetts, but it should be highly regulated but not banned, strictly for serious bodily harm and lethal circumstances. To say that it cannot be used under any circumstances is short-sighted. So yeah, just like I was just saying, if you can articulate when and how and why you needed to use it, just make sure you can articulate that on the stand if things go south. So that's what I got to say there. And VVV on Facebook says most new officers are young. How do you teach them to hold back emotions so hands-on doesn't become excessive? Since you're in an academy environment, you want to answer that, Raquel?
All right. Because from the beginning at our academy, just specifically, we teach time distance covering, we teach de-escalation from day one. So you can teach that because our academy is 9 months long. So you can teach that seeing them every day for 9 months over that period of time. And people just generally are different, and people are going to learn at different rates, and they're going to, like, it might be easy for me to de-escalate, but some guy might take him a little bit longer depending on what his background was. So the perspective is just different as far as how we teach people and can they learn to de-escalate? Can they learn to not let their emotions? What we have to realize is, as police officers, we're still people, right? So we still have those emotions. That being a police officer didn't really change that. It's just understanding how to control those things because we're held at a higher standard. That's more of it. And because our training is so long, we don't have a high rate of officer excessive use of force with our officers. But it's also important to realize we're just all different. And
yeah.
I'm still a person before the officer, right? So I could still get angry if something can make me upset. It's just understanding that I have to de-escalate the situation when it calls for it.
Yeah. 9 month academy. That's a pretty long academy. Most of ours out here in California are nine months or so, maybe 7 months, but 6 months to 7 months, but 9 months. Yeah. Yeah. That's, is that typical in Texas, or is that just Dallas?
It's Dallas. It's just Dallas. And what it is how the state has their standards of how long or what all you need to know at the academy before you can, or what all you need to know before you can have your license. And then Dallas just adds quite a bit onto that. And it's been good. And it was talk about shortening it, but I just think that's a bad idea. Just because we're used to having the 9 months, and because we have gone over and above with the training after getting the license, and because of our use of force rates are just, excessive force rates are just so low, I think that shortening the academy for us personally, I think is a bad idea. I think the extra training is huge.
Right. Well, that's the climate now. More training is always better. But, to have more training instead of less, you can't go back from that, So
I don't think going backwards is not a bad, that's a bad idea.
Why would you?
Yeah.
You're not the only one. So absolutely. Absolutely. So, moving on in the use of force, some situations we've seen in the viral videos, knives, and then Monday morning quarterbacking from everybody that's not in law enforcement always says, why couldn't they just, they watch too many TV and movies. Why couldn't they just shoot the knife out of his hand? Or why did they shoot somebody? He just had a knife. You want to explain how a knife can be deadly to somebody, Jeremy?
Sure. And this one really hits home for me because I've been training in Filipino martial arts for probably like 10 to 15 years. And in Filipino martial arts, it's primarily a weapons-based art. So the focal point is training in knife and stick and the elements that relate to that, both offensively and defensively. And so what I would tell people in that situation is go into that type of training environment and maybe even use like a marker and see how difficult it is to deal with a knife encounter. And then imagine what it would be like if every time that marker touched your body, it was opening flesh, right? And having that realistic ideology behind it and that realistic perspective in seeing how it works in real life is going to really educate you on why officers respond the way they do when faced with a knife, that type of situation, and why we don't resort to a less lethal force option when deadly force is when we're faced with a deadly force situation. So I think it just comes down to people not knowing the reality of how deadly a knife is. So much so that I am of the belief that under certain situations, I would prefer to have, if I was the person protecting myself, I would prefer to have a knife over a gun in certain ranges in certain situations. So that's the level of respect that I have for the deadliness of a blade, and which is why I can certainly understand why certain officers use that level of force in those situations.
Yeah. I mean, we can always de-escalate, if you get the time and the distance to do so, over a firearm, of course. But, like you said, there was that one video of a guy that had a knife, a martial arts artist, showing how quickly he can advance on someone. I'm sure people have seen that one. It's like we got Craig back. Craig, you got a better connection there?
Yeah, to relocate. Sorry about that.
All right, here we go. Yeah.
I won't know what provider my cell phone is, but
yeah, okay. No worries. We're talking about knives and how deadly they can be in a confrontation, and why, people Monday morning quarterback and always say, why couldn't the officer just shoot the knife out of his hand? Why are they shooting someone that just had a knife? And Jeremy went into, some stuff about how deadly knives can be. You want to chime in on that real quick?
Well, edge weapons in general, from close quarters, doesn't matter what position you're in. Somebody can be sitting on top of you. If you have a knife on the bottom, the person sitting on top of you is in danger. That's just, it doesn't matter what. You can be underneath, on the bottom. Whoever has the edge weapon in a close quarters is going to stab the other person. That's not debatable. It's just how much times they're going to get stabbed and where.
Yep, absolutely. Real quick, we were talking about the LVNR, what's commonly known but is incorrectly known as the chokehold. Does your agency authorize that up there in Washington, Craig?
We have it we used to have it as an intermediate force option. Our chief suspended it temporarily to reevaluate. So now it's at the same level of force as a force that can be used in response to death or serious bodily injury, which, as a jiu-jitsu person, like if you go to any jiu-jitsu class, I mean, that's happening to every single student at least 8 to 10 times a class, every class, minimum, right? Times 4 days a week, times, whatever many times, all the schools in the world. So, I mean, yeah, you do it correctly. I personally feel it's probably the safest way to control somebody, regardless of size, which is why it's so amazing. A child, a woman, I mean, you put it on somebody, their choice is to stop fighting or they will go to sleep.
It's the care afterwards that a lot of people are getting themselves into trouble, where they're not, making sure that the person sat up and breathing and getting medical aid and all that type of stuff. So maybe retraining would have been better instead of just halting it all together. But we're here now. So as officers, go ahead.
Sorry, you could say the same thing for any aspect of our training, though. We don't. As a profession, we don't have enough on-duty training time. For everything.
No doubt. So as officers, I'm sure we've all been in the physical confrontations. Sometimes we've been in them solo, where your backup isn't readily there. How often has that happened to you? And what's the longest amount of time you've been in a physical confrontation without any backup? Because I want to talk about, being able to defend yourself until your backup arrives. Let's start with you, Raquel. What's the longest amount of time you think you've been in a confrontation without backup?
Without backup, not very.
Are you guys always with a partner in Dallas?
No, we're not always with a partner, but the city every now and then it's like, okay, everybody's riding 2-man, so you're riding 2-man. Then everybody's riding 1-man, so there's more officers on the street, but then you're following your partner to all the calls. So I haven't been I've been in some good fights, but I haven't been without cover for over a minute or anything like that. Yeah. Usually.
What about yourself, Jeremy? Anything like that ever happen?
Pretty much the same. I come from a very small department, and the area that we police, I mean, backup is always relatively close. And then the tactics that we apply within the policies allow for that as well, where you're not supposed to do certain things without your backup present. Yeah. So that really minimized the chances of a lot of those situations happening a lot of times. Now, while it certainly can happen, for me, it's never been more than a minute before somebody was there to help.
Yeah, absolutely. And Craig, last but not least, what about yourself?
Yeah, luckily in Bellevue, we don't have that issue. There's lots of cover. The cover will come right away. In Honolulu, it wasn't a physical fight, but parts of the island you were pretty spread out, fairly thin, and there was a disturbance that I went to that almost turned into a fight between about maybe 8 people, and my cover was 5 minutes away. Yeah.
A lot of those times you just want to, hey, if they're going to fight those 8 people, hey, just have at it, and then when my backup gets here, then we'll handle it. But yeah, I brought all this up because I wanted to show this video here of this Las Vegas officer that had to deal with some person on his own until his backup arrived. Let's all check this out.
Do you have anything illegal in your pockets? That's all I'm asking. No. Can I search your pockets?
No, sir.
Okay.
I don't have any. Stop. Come on, man.
Dog, give me a break, man.
Come on, man.
Get off, dude.
No, stop, boy. God damn it. 416. God damn it. Hey, help me, dog. Down. Oh, wow. What the? Stop resisting! Stop resisting! I got it! Stop resisting! Stop resisting!
Now that seemed like forever. If you're involved in that sounds like if just watching it was probably like a minute, but for him, I'm sure it would seem like forever. VV on Facebook says that's scary. He could have gotten bit or spit on, etc. Yeah, I mean that's the least of our problems there in that situation. What you guys think he did a pretty good job there? At least I've always been under the impression that when you're in a situation like that, just hold on, tucker the guy out, tire the guy out until your backup arrives. He pulled out the taser. I don't know if that was smart enough, but he got through it. So what do you guys think about what the job this guy did? Go ahead, Raquel.
Yeah, it's easy for us to sit back. I think it was fine. I wouldn't have taken my taser out personally, but like I say, it's easy for us to watch it.
Yeah.
And know. I do like the idea of, and people's experience is going to be different, just like Craig and Dr. Butler, their experience with martial arts would just be different. So they might have a different, they're probably looking at it thinking of all the stuff that they're going to do right now. You know what I mean? And I probably would have been more of the hold him in, get him in a hold until my backup got there. Right.
Yeah.
But I was intense watching it because I'm just like, but it's easier for us to watch. I wouldn't, in my opinion, take a weapon out at that point. That's just, to me, it's a bad idea because he has access to it too.
Right.
Yeah.
I think he was doing a pretty good job of just holding on until his backup got there. What's that technique that he was doing there? Jeremy was kind of flattening himself out, and then he was
full mount. It's called the full mount.
Okay. Yeah, he was doing a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good, he's obviously skilled in some form of grappling based on the way he responded to that. I would agree in terms of the use of the taser. I mean, while he clearly had control, and maybe he felt that would be that motivator to gain compliance. At the same time, it probably wasn't necessary because of the level of control that he was able to maintain. So, but again, like we keep saying, it's easy to watch it, and we really don't know what was going on in his mind at that time to determine why he may have taken that action.
Yeah, I'm sure he just probably wanted to end it now as best he could, because he probably didn't know when his backup was arriving. So yeah, so that's probably why he brought that out. What do you think he was doing? Was that jujitsu? What was that? Or
that was definitely some. Well, I mean, I hate to say that was jujitsu, because grappling arts, these positions are in various grappling arts. So, I mean, he could have very well been a judo practitioner. There's a full mount in judo. There's a full mount even in certain wrestling art. So my guess would be jiu-jitsu based on the popularity of jiu-jitsu and law enforcement and his control. But, I mean, it could have been any slew of grappling arts for sure.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to ask you next is what are the best form of martial arts that are best for in a law enforcement environment?
Well, I would say, in my opinion, grappling-based arts, going right back to what we're talking about, grappling-based arts that regularly employ some form of live resistance. I think that's critical, right? Where every day you're training against someone who doesn't want you to do whatever you're doing to them. So arts like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, judo, wrestling, in the various forms of wrestling there. Sambo is another example, which is a Russian grappling art. Any art like that is going to be most ideal. And the reason I say that is because, as law enforcement, in order to effect an arrest, right, we have to gain control of the subject. We have to completely subdue them and get them in cuffs, while with the objective of using the minimal force necessary to accomplish this goal. So those arts that I just described, that's literally the strategy of those arts, to get a person down, gain control of them, and subdue them. So that's why I say that these are going to be the most ideal options. And you don't have to do much harm to that person. You have the skill to actually get them under control and not necessarily hurt them and keep yourself safe.
Yeah. Roger Murtaugh on Facebook says definitely Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is probably best in the law enforcement environment. And a VVV on Facebook says, do you think male or female officers get more challenged to get physical? What do you think about that, Raquel?
Well, I think that depending on the female officer, they probably do get challenged a little bit more. I think one of the major things I loved about teaching at the academy, and I was a little bit harder on the female recruits, I think, just because being a female out on the streets for several years, I had that experience that, look, they don't care that you're not as strong or whatever the case is. I like to say the weaker sex, just generally, because I do understand fitness and the body and our testosterone levels and things of that nature that the normal person just don't think about. So I don't want to put it like that. But people don't care that you are a girl. You have to get out there, and sometimes you have to be stronger and faster, and you have to work harder. And that's okay. It's not that that's not fair or anything like that. It's just how it is. And sometimes you need to be there working harder because you need to work harder, because you may be challenged more. And it's not, people are like, well, that's not fair. Well, it's really not about that once you get out there. Right. It's about you being able to do your job. And sometimes it's harder for me to do something than it is for another person to do something. And that's okay. I just need to work harder at that.
Yeah. The question there, Craig, before you got back on was, do you think males or females get challenged to fight more in law enforcement?
I think it's, you could generalize it more and say people who are under 6 foot, under 200 pounds.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
me.
you could say that. You could say that. Yeah.
I think like finer than a bunch of average sized women. So, you know, I have to know something. Else by physics, I'm in trouble.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. In my career, you know, I've got over 20 years in this business as well. I've found the people that I've had to have confrontations with aren't the big 6'6", 300-pound guy. It's always the 5'5" little dude that wants to fight, you know. That's just always been my experience, that, you know, they want to fight. The big dudes are always like, hey, you know, put your hands behind your back. They are okay, and they do it. It's the little dudes that want to fight, and they don't want to go to jail. So you got to stay up on them. So
Can I add one thing real quick too on the
go ahead, Jeremy.
On the topic of martial arts? I do believe that, like I said, I am a strong component of grappling arts in general, but I do believe that as far as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is concerned, it's going to be the most ideal when we're talking about the wide range of sizes of officers, right? So an officer who, you know, is 5'1", 120 pounds, because Jiu-Jitsu is such a leverage-based art, which was really designed for smaller people to be able to survive and protect themselves against larger opponents or larger adversaries. I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is ideal as a whole. My only concern is that I have a ton of respect for all grappling arts, because I feel that they all have that valuable trait of subdue and control. So I do think somebody, even, you know, somebody coming in with a grappling background, maybe if they wrestled in high school, while those tactics aren't going to necessarily carry over exactly, you know, like if you're used to a sport, you have to understand the difference between sport and reality. But the attributes that they gain from their experience in wrestling will certainly benefit them in a job in law enforcement in terms of that control. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Absolutely. So, you know, I want to transition over to civilians, which is the audience right now, probably watching the show. We want to give them some tips. I know, Jeremy, looks like you've done some stuff for some classes, some safety classes. Pull up a little picture there for people in the past. Why don't you talk about this photo here? What's going on here?
Well, this was a sorority at a university, and yeah, they were a handful, because you can see it's an extremely large group. I actually had a few assistant instructors for that to help manage such a large group of people. That's probably the largest group I've ever taught at one time. So it was a basic women's self-defense class for this sorority. And so we went over a variety of tactics in that, from actual defense on the ground to verbal de-escalation skills and just general safety measures. So, but I try to keep it philosophy based and conceptual versus giving them a whole bunch of techniques, because let's be real, are you really going to remember, 10, 15 different techniques versus giving you a principle that applies in a variety of situations?
Yeah, absolutely. So what can women do? What are some tips that women can employ? And not just women, men as well, young adults, kids. What are some tips, some safety tips that we can all take home with us, as far as being alone, being in darkness, those sorts of things?
Well, first and foremost, I would say trusting your instincts. I always start with that, because our body tells us when something is wrong, right? I call it the spidey senses, right? So we have these feelings when we're in a dangerous situation. 9 times out of 10, we feel it before it happens. It's just, for some reason, humans, we tend to ignore those signs that we got, or we take too much time to act on those signs. And the reason I say humans is because animals have those same instincts. And if you notice, animals are very quick to go on the defensive, right? Yeah. Whereas with humans, for some reason, we tend to suppress that, or we try to rationalize and say, well, maybe it's nothing. So my biggest advice would be, if you feel that feeling that tells you that something's wrong, something's probably wrong, and you should probably act. Whatever that means for you, take off running, raise your voice, yell, fight if that's what it takes. But so first and foremost is trusting those instincts and responding to them. And then I would also say train, right? Consistent, training. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to become a martial artist. even if you just devote maybe 3 or 4 times a year to your own education and self-preservation, and just to give you some tactics to be able to review throughout the year so that you have something to go off of in terms of your overall safety. And then obviously there's the factors of like overall awareness, being aware of your surroundings when you're going about your everyday life. And so there's that I think everybody's familiar with, but the big piece to me is people not really, generally human nature to not really trust our instincts and not listen to those things.
Right. VVV on Facebook says, Dr. Butler, thanks. That's great advice. Sometimes we get too comfortable and disregard the signals.
For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. If a woman is actually attacked, what are some safety things or some tips or some things that they can do if they are actually attacked?
Okay. So one thing I want to start with, and I always start with this on this topic, is there may be some survivors of sex assault or attacks that can be listening. So rather than framing it as what should a woman do, I'd rather frame it as, here are some concepts to consider, right?
Yeah, what can someone do? Yeah.
Exactly. Because ultimately, whatever action you take was the best action that you could take in that moment in time, right? Yeah. So I always like to start with that I don't want this to come off as any type of victim blaming or anything along those lines. But the big 3 things that I would recommend in terms of if you are attacked is, one, is a concept I call preparing your witnesses. And what I mean by that is attracting as much attention as you can from anyone who may or may not be around you. So people are nosy. So when they hear yelling, they're going to want to figure out what's going on. But I don't believe in the idea of just screaming, because oftentimes in today's society, people scream and it's kind of ignored. So when we're preparing our witnesses, when we're yelling what's on our mind. I don't know you. You're too close. Back up. Stop. So say things that are that will attract the attention of people around you. And then 2, in terms of physical skills, just invoke that spirit, that fighting spirit, and then you just lash out, right? It's almost like that animal instinct, in my opinion. Is that idea of the longer that a confrontation lasts, the less likely an attacker is going to continue their attack. So if you just attack, right, whatever you got, and areas to target are going to be areas on the body that can't be strengthened. This is how we even the odds. So eyes, nose, throat, groin, ears. These are areas that no matter how many weights you lift, you can't strengthen your eye muscles to withstand a thumb in your eyes or your throat or groin. So those areas are areas that you want to target. And managing that distance is important as well. You either need to get all the way out or you need to go all the way in with a full-on committed attack, and then you escape as soon as there's a clear opportunity to.
No doubt. And I've also heard if you're actually attacked and someone's on top of you, scratch. Do all the scratching you can, because in case you are, you're raped or you are killed, at least that assailant's DNA will be in your fingernails, and they can, hopefully get that DNA from your fingernails. So
absolutely,
yeah, absolutely do that. You think women should carry or can carry any sort of weapons? What are good for civilians to carry with them?
It's not necessarily a bad idea, but I think if that's your choice, if you choose to carry a weapon, the 2 main things I'd say remember is, 1, make sure you're in compliance with the laws of your state. So if you're going to carry a weapon, you need to do some research on whether or not that weapon is legal in your state, so that you're not getting in a situation where you can get into some trouble. And 2, most importantly, is make sure you're training with this weapon to a point of proficiency. So, and that's including weapon retention, being like, what happens if someone's trying to take it away from you? Have you prepared yourself for keeping that weapon? Also, where are you keeping it? Where are you storing it? If it's at the bottom of your purse and someone is right in front of you, are you going to have time? And this is a scenario I do in a lot of my women's self-defense workshops. Is I'd say, okay, wherever you keep your pepper spray, that's a common one, and they'll have it like at the bottom of their purse. And I'm like, okay, get it now, and I just go straight after them. And it's that rude awakening that are you really going to be able to access that from the bottom of your purse in the heat of this moment? So things like that is understanding, where are you storing it? Have you practiced retrieving it from wherever you store it and being able to get it off, whatever that is, in a timely fashion? Do you understand the functionality of the weapon? And then also, are you doing scenarios where you're practicing different situations for how this will happen and how I would use this weapon effectively? So just carrying the weapon just to say for that mental peace of mind won't do much for you unless you actually are training with the weapon. As a matter of fact, it can work against you because then it can be taken against you and used on you at that point. You're providing it for the attacker. So if we're going to carry it, make sure we are prepared to use it.
Yeah. All right. I wanted to get you in here real quick because I know you wanted to talk about that before we get out of here, Raquel, about women's self-defense. We were talking about if a woman is attacked, what should they do? What can they do? What are some things that they can do? And we're also talking about should they carry weapons? And Dr. Butler was talking about making sure you're proficient, make sure that you can carry a weapon in your state, make sure that it's not taken away from you. What are your thoughts on any of these things? Some tips.
And I got in on the end of what Dr. Butler was saying, and I agree with that. Before you go out and buy something, make sure that you're proficient with it, or make sure that if you're not, that's something that's important to you because so many of us think, well, I'm just going to go buy a gun, or I'm just going to, well, hell, if you don't know what you're doing, it's better that you don't have it, right? Because the suspect can take it from you. So it's better that you don't have it if you're not ready and you're not proficient with whatever it is you're using. But I think, as a female, I think it's important for us to take self-defense classes. I think that they should, right? I think that that's something you should invest in. I made my daughters take classes. Well, I taught the classes, but I made sure my daughters did it before they went off to college. I think that's of huge importance. I also think that we need to, if I can give some safety tips right now, because this is huge for me. If we can get off the cell phones, we did a study when I was doing a Krav Maga class, and we just went into grocery stores and just walked up to young girls on their phones and just stood like right up on them like this. I'm just right here. I could read her text message, didn't even recognize I was there. And if women realize how extremely dangerous that is, I stood next to her over her shoulder 2 minutes. Yeah. And it didn't even take a minute, right? Yep. And we did that throughout the grocery store and then stopped to talk to them about it or talk to the parents about it so they could see how dangerous that is. I mean, if there's a text that's just that important, I tell people, go put your back up against the wall and send the text. So at least they're not coming up behind you. Right. I tell women, it's funny how we're okay with being mean or have an attitude with family members, but we won't do it with strangers, right? If a stranger's in my space, why can't I just be mean or be stern with that person? But we'll have a friend and a family member we'll be stern with all day long, but a stranger's too close and we won't say anything. And I think it's important that it's okay for me to look like I might not be the person to deal with that day, right? And women need to be okay with that. It's okay to make eye contact. It's okay I want you to know that I see you. I know what you're wearing. I know what you look like. I know how tall you are, everything. Eye contact when we were talking to some suspects where that was one of the biggest things. She just wouldn't look at me. So I know she wouldn't be able to even identify me. We got to be okay with saying something. Look, you're too close to me. You're in my personal space. I speak to people so they know that I see you. Hey, how's it going? You're too close. I'm not comfortable with you that close. And I think that sometimes we're just not bold enough to say some of the things we need to say so people can think differently. I also think that if we are attacked, we need to pretty much become the attacker. I needed to be where when they saw me and that assailant in the fight, they thought I started it. You know what I mean? You need to actually be crazy for a little bit. They need to think that she must have started that. I just saw it. It needs to look like that. You need to be okay with realizing they need to go down and you need to do whatever it takes to make sure they don't leave the scene with you as a female, right? Well, as a guy too, but just generally, I think sometimes we take for granted just the things going on around us, and we don't understand how dangerous it is. And I know us in this industry or in the career that we're in, we get to see it all the time, and it's hard to express to a female how dangerous it really can be. It's hard to express that, and we get to see it constantly, especially, you know, in the assaults division. I mean, I get to see that, you know, how women are attacked and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. You know, I had those discussions. We had those discussions, my wife and I, with our daughter all the time. Not so much with our son, even though we should as well with him. But, you know, kids nowadays, you know, they're teenagers all day long. They're on the phone and walking with their head down, and just everything you just said. You know, those are good tips. But that's, you know, that's the generation. So we got to kind of cross the board, because their friends are doing it, and everybody on Facebook, and well, they're probably not doing Facebook, TikTok and Instagram and whatever else news out. They're all doing it. So yeah, we got to keep pounding that into them. All right, I appreciate that. I'm glad you came back. For everybody out there, obviously Raquel's at work, and so she probably has something to do real quick. And Craig was at work as well, so he, you know, we lost him a few times, and he probably went to work. So we appreciate both of you guys. We appreciate everybody for coming on. It was really good. I appreciate everything you guys did for us. And yeah, so my name is Dale. Thank everybody for joining here on the Black and Blue Live podcast here. I appreciate you guys for coming in, your comments, your questions. Make sure you check out Black and Blue podcast, the next episode tomorrow with Lieutenant Robbie Williams at the Hawthorne, California Police Department. My name is Dale. I appreciate everybody, and I'm out.
This has been a Maitre D Entertainment presentation.